The facial bones are mostly small bones that we're going to find in the anterior region of the skull that are going to make up the face and kind of all the way back to the calvaria or the base of the skull. The upper jaw is the maxilla, so you can see this in the close-up, and it's going to be this entire front bone. So if you touch the bone kind of above your top teeth, that's your maxilla. And this is the largest of these mostly facial bones. We've got the palatine bone. So the palatine bone is going to form the palate or the top of your mouth along with the maxilla. So the roof of your mouth is made up of two bones. We've got the maxilla and then this palatine bone. So if you reach your tongue up and touch the roof of your mouth, you should feel a hard portion. That's here with this palatine bone. That's the hard palate. And then if you keep reaching further back with your tongue, you'll feel kind of a soft portion. And that's back here. That would be the soft palate. We've got the zygomatic bone right here. And so that makes up the angle of the cheek. So if you reach up and touch your cheekbone, that's your zygomatic bone. And that's going to reach back and touch the zygomatic process of the temporal bone. The lacrimal bone is the wall of the orbit of the eye. So we can see this right here. This is a really, really tiny bone inside of the orbit of the eye. So this is the big orbit of the eye, which is made up by many facial bones, and then bordered at the roof by the frontal bone. The nasal bone is the bridge of your nose. So you can see the nasal bone right here, as well as right here. And there are two of these, one for each side. And then inside of this nasal passageway, we can see the inferior nasal conchae. There are three of these. The superior and the middle were on the ethmoid bone right here. And then the inferior is its own bone right down here. The mandible, or the lower jaw, in other animals we call this the dentary, but in the humans it's fused into a single mandible. There's no separation. Infants have a separation here. So this is the strongest facial bone, and it's the most mobile bone of our skull. It's going to have our lower teeth, which sit in these little alveolar processes. It has a lateral angle here, where it changes from the body up to the ramus. The coronoid is where the temporalis inserts. So we've got this large portion here. So this is where our temporalis bone inserts. So our temporalis muscle inserts and then sits on the temporal portion of the skull. And then we have our condyloid process, which is a condyle. So condylar or condyle. And this is the other half of that jaw joint. So you can see how that condyle fits right into that mandibular fossa. There are a few bones that are associated with the skull that aren't actually in the skull. So the first is the hyoid bone. And if you feel your trachea right on your neck and then go all the way up, it probably won't even feel it, but you can feel the cartilage of your trachea, and that's held up by this hyoid bone, which makes kind of a U-shaped here. So it's got this large body in the front, two lesser horns in the top, and those are going to connect the stylohyoid muscle all the way up to the styloid process, and then two greater horns in the back, again for muscular contraction. This is the only bone in the body that does not articulate with any other bones. If you watch crime shows or bones or crime shows where they say the hyoid bone was cracked, so they assume that it was strangulation. So sometimes if you strangle someone around the neck, it can crack the hyoid bone. We also have the middle ear bones. You can see them here in the middle portion of the ear. So we've got the malleus, the incus, and then the stapes. And these are going to physically connect the tympanic membrane of the outer ear to the round window of the inner ear. So here's the inner ear in here. And so that helps to relay the vibrations we get from the inner ear. This is going to amplify those vibrations and bring them to the inner ear. So here's an infant skull, and you can see that the bones are much further apart. They have not fused together. So in an infant, there are these large areas that are soft. So these would be the soft spots. And these are called the fontanelles. The largest two are the anterior fontanelle and the posterior fontanelle. And then eventually these will close over and become sutures. You can also see that the infant has 2 frontal bones, and these are going to eventually fuse in an adult. So take a moment and describe the jaw joint, how the mandible articulates with the skull.